For a few years in the 1970s, the Mr. Asia syndicate made millions.
Heroin creates its own market. It acts like a form of plague.
Until jealousy, betrayal and murder brought it all crashing down.
Clark would have threatened him. Go and kill him. If you don't, I'm going to kill you and your wife and your son.
This is Mr. Asia, A Forgotten History. All episodes now available on iHeartRadio, Apple, Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.
You're listening to the Weekend Sport Podcast with Jason Pine from News Talk ZB.
And so to cricket, as mentioned, for the first time in 8 years, New Zealand cricket is seeking a new Black Caps coach. But just which teams the newcomer will take control of is yet to be determined. Incumbent Gary Stead has stepped down from his white ball duties. His contract expires in June, but he is still contemplating whether he wants to put his name forward to remain as Test coach. Now, whether or not that's even an option remains to be seen. New Zealand cricket haven't yet committed to staying with an all-format coach or splitting the roles between red and white ball for the first time ever. New Zealand cricket's head of high performance, Bryan Stronach, said this week the ultimate goal was to get the best coach or coaches for New Zealand's players. England had split coaches between 2012 and 2014. Andy Flower looked after the Test side and Ashley Giles the white ball side. They did it again between 2022 and 2024 with, of course, our own Brendan McCullum looking after the Test side and Matthew Mott the white ball teams. And from the start of this year, Brendan McCullum took charge across all formats. Pakistan and South Africa also make use of split coaches for their different setups. So what are the pros and cons? Is it the right thing for the Black Caps to do? Let's bring in leading English cricket writer from The Guardian, Ali Martin. Ali, thanks for joining us. Let's start with some generic pros and cons, shall we? So let's start with the pros, the benefits. What are the benefits of splitting the coaches between red and white ball?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Jason. Thanks for having me. I think in England's experience, what they found, particularly in the most recent era that you spoke about with Mott and McCullum, was that just this sheer fixture overload meant that splitting the coaches allowed those coaches to manage their workloads much better. They weren't completely strung out. They could hit each series with fresh energy, you'd have to say. I think another advantage is you can bring in specialism by way of format. It might be that a particular coach has their strengths in one format and that actually lends itself to having a specialist for one of the others, or for the other two if it's ODIs and T20. And I think a big thing at the moment we're finding in the modern era, particularly with the rise of franchise T20 cricket, is that coaches can pick up really lucrative gigs for pretty much an annual salary for about 2 months' work. And that being the case is that by splitting the coaches, you can actually bring in more of the talent pool around the world and be a slightly more attractive proposition so that particular coach may be able to marry up working with the national team and still having the opportunities in franchise cricket as well. So that was certainly England's thinking when they split it with McCullum and Mott. But as you mentioned, we've gone back to the single coach now here in England. All right, so those are the pros. Let's talk about the cons. Conversely, what are the downsides, Ali, of split coaches? Well, the cons are that, with split coaches is that you can get into a situation where the two teams, or maybe the Test team and the white ball team, are at very different stages of their development. And the one medicine for one team is not necessarily the medicine that the other team requires. So in that instance, you can find that with two coaches that sometimes the messaging can become a bit mixed. And for it to work well, I believe you have to have a real alignment in terms of the overall vision between the two coaches and extremely good communication. Another pitfall that we saw, and a good example was during that Flower-Giles split that England had 10, 12 years ago, was that one team can feel like the other's getting priority in terms of resource. The way England and their schedule is mapped out there have been times when, the selectors have had to decide who is going into what format and who's being rested. And quite often, one format and one coach will feel like they are the sort of the second-class citizen in that instance. So that is an issue, and that does require good communication and a good alignment of the overall goal for all teams to work, I believe. So England have gone to split coaches twice and come back twice. So is that
an admission of sorts that it doesn't work, or is the current scenario where they've brought it all back under Brendan McCullum just based around Brendan McCullum?
Yeah, I mean, particularly in that instance of the McCullum one, I mean, there was a huge lag in terms of fixtures after the pandemic. And actually, England found themselves, a test match would finish on day 5, and quite literally the following day, a white ball series would start in another part of the world. So that coach cannot be in 2 places at one time. So it really was a kind of pragmatic view that was taken in that instance. And, England did enjoy some early success when they had the split coaching there. England did win that T20 World Cup at the end of 22. And at the same time, the Test team enjoyed a really strong revival under McCullum and Stokes. So we saw in that instance that, it did work initially. I think what's happened subsequently is that the fixture congestion has eased a little bit. We're actually seeing it might only be a week or 2 weeks, but there are gaps actually starting to develop in the schedule between series. So a coach can physically get from one to the next. And I think with England not going that well under Motton and Butler, in the end, they gave up both their world titles, had a very poor Champions Trophy, which was McCullum's first assignment, and led to Josh Butler being sacked as captain, or stepping down as captain, but it was kind of inevitable. I think looking at that is that McCullum has seen it. I think he believes he can make it work. And England are quite fortunate. They have a coach of his calibre and kind of status who believes he can commit to a year-round single job with the national team when, as I mentioned earlier, there is a huge appeal there to surely pick up a couple of gigs on the side in T20, which as I say, are pretty lucrative.
Just for reference, Ali, how much crossover is there currently between England's red and white ball sides in terms of players who play just red ball, just white ball, and players who play both?
Yeah, good question. It's certainly during that sort of post-pandemic era, they really did split off into 2 separate groups because of the logistics I mentioned. And what you had in that instance was guys like Ben Stokes and Joe Root would kind of come back just for the major tournaments. And that does create issues. You kind of build one team in bilateral cricket, but then some big stars come back for the main event. That can knock people out of position. That can change the strategy. So that can create an issue. What we're finding with McCullum now, with the fixtures having eased a bit for England, and this probably reflects his background with New Zealand as well, is that he is looking to foster probably a more tight-knit group. And I think he's trying to bring the 2 sets of players into one and have a smaller pool, so that he can get consistent messaging into a smaller pool of players who can carry it across formats. One of the big sort of takeaways England had from their very poor Champions trophies, they really believe now that Test and ODI cricket are the 2 formats that really marry up closest, and that T20 is now the outlier. So it might be that, we've just got Harry Brook, who's an all-format player, has just been made captain of the white ball teams, but it might be that his T20 side probably contains more specialists going down the line, and that we see the ODI teams and Test teams marry up a bit more, certainly with the batting and also potentially with the fast bowlers as well.
That is so interesting that T20 is now becoming the one which is different, rather than Test cricket being the one that is different. Ali, do you think the players who play just white ball or just red ball cricket would prefer a coach just for them?
Yeah, but potentially, I think. I mean, again, it will come down to the individual's strengths as a coach and whether they do have a good sort of cross-format calibre. Another thing we're finding at the moment is that players are really looking for coaches who've been there and done that. And that is, they really kind of respect the caps and the achievements of players, of coaches in their playing days. So that's another factor there. I think it really does come back down to the individuals. It comes down to the individuals selected, it comes down to alignment of vision, and it comes down to excellent communication. If you can get those right, I do think it can work. But it really does sort of depend on resources, whether equally financial resources, whether New Zealand can attract that one big name coach and get them on a year-round salary, or whether actually splitting it does help them find the best candidate for each format, because it allows that coach to also go off and either take their well-earned breaks or maybe pick up a gig in one of those champions, in one of those franchise leagues. I was crunching the numbers for New Zealand and England up to the end of April in 27, which is the end of the current Future Tours programme. New Zealand have about 151 days of cricket outside of global tournaments. England 166. So actually, New Zealand have got quite a bit of Test cricket coming up. So I can see why they are mulling this over. But it is still less than England with that one coach. So you think, in theory, it should be possible to have a single coach overseeing the whole thing. They might miss the odd series to have a break. It's a bit of family time. That probably comes down to how the strength of their assistant coaches and whether they're able to step up. But that also provides opportunities for coach development as well.
Indeed. I'd just be keen to get your view on something that high-performance manager Bryan Stronach here at New Zealand Cricket said this week. He said, at the moment, we haven't any strong preference for either a split coaching role or a sole appointment who covers all three formats. And we're unlikely, he said, to be clearer on that until we see who's putting their name forward. I found that interesting. Does it seem like the right approach to you, or should they decide first of all if they're going to split them or not, and then take their applications accordingly?
Yeah, I think it probably is the right approach. I think you do have to kind of survey the field and see what the options are out there, and I think that will come down to, so the individuals who come in, they have those discussions. You may find, England certainly found this. I think with McCullum, the initial suspicion was that he was kind of geared up towards the white ball side. And when they had those initial conversations, from his point of view, he saw the greater remedial work needing to be done with the test team. And that's what really appealed to him. At the time, they thought England was, the white ball team was a pretty well-oiled machine. They did have 2 world titles, so they kind of, that did stack up in some respects. But what we've subsequently seen is that white ball team has fallen off, and the McCullum now wants to get the whole thing together. The question, I have seen this point raised by Mike Atherton, former England captain himself, is to whether the kind of magic of McCullum and that messaging that he brings, will that be spread too thinly across 3 teams year round? Will it lose some of its luster because players will be consistently hearing the same voice over again, and that might maybe shorten his shelf life long term? I don't know. We'll have to see how that one plays out. It hasn't been a great start for him in the white ball formats, but this is now a fresh start with a new captain, and with the schedule easing, he will hope that he can get that message across in all 3 formats, and the results take an uptick.
Yeah, well, I think we'd love to have Brendan McCullum in charge of our teams, but clearly that's not going to happen. Ali, you've given us heaps to think about. I know our listeners are going to want to have their say on this. Just before you go, though, just want to flick across to football, because you are a Nottingham Forest fan. Heady times for you. 3rd in the Premier League with 7 games to go. Semi-finals of the FA Cup, and of course, our man Chris Wood at the heart of it all, although, as you'll also know, he got injured when he was back here playing for New Zealand in those FIFA World Cup qualifiers. But how much have you enjoyed watching Forest and watching our man Chris Wood bang them in for you this season?
Oh, man, it's been manna from heaven. I cannot think of he's the best striker we've had probably since Collymore about 25 years ago. Just that incredible low heart rate, the way that he's able to pick himself up even after a miss and still put the next one away. He's a real leader on the field up front for Forest. I did actually tune in to watch that World Cup qualifying final. I think it was sort of over breakfast time. My wife thought I was mad, and I was grimacing when Chris Wood went off with that injury. But yeah, it's an incredible time at the club. I'm just waiting to find out if I got my FA Cup semi-final tickets through. I should find out in the next 24 hours. And hoping that Chris is back on the park for them, because we do need him. We played without a striker on the weekend because of injuries, so we need him back ASAP.
All right, we'll keep our fingers crossed for that for you, and also for our national team as well. Hope you get your FA Cup semi-final tickets as well, Eli. I think you probably deserve them. Thanks so much for joining us to talk some cricket, mate. We'll do it again soon.
Lovely. Cheers, Jason.
For more from Weekend Sport with Jason Pine, listen live to News Talk ZB weekends from midday, or follow the podcast on iHeartRadio.